7. McWatt. Ordinarily, Yossarian's pilot was McWatt, who, shaving in loud, red, clean pajamas outside his tent each morning, was one of the odd, ironic, incomprehensible things surrounding Yossarian. McWatt was the craziest combat man of them all, probably, because he was perfectly sane and still did not mind the war. He was a short-legged, wide-shouldered, smiling young soul who whistled bouncy show tunes continuously and turned over cards with sharp snaps when he dealt at blackjack or poker until Hungry Joe disintegrated into quaking despair finally beneath their cumulative impact and began ranting at him to stop snapping the cards. "You son of a bitch, you only do it because it hurts me," Hungry Joe would yell furiously, as Yossarian held him back soothingly with one hand. "That's the only reason he does it, because he likes to hear me scream, you goddamn son of a bitch." McWatt crinkled his fine, freckled nose apologetically and vowed not to snap the cards anymore, but always forgot. McWatt wore fleecy bedroom slippers with his red pajamas and slept between freshly pressed colored bed sheets like the one Milo had retrieved half of for him from the grinning thief with the sweet tooth in exchange for none of the pitted dates Milo had borrowed from Yossarian. I'm sorry, that's so nutrient dense, I have to read it again. McWatt wore fleecy bedroom slippers with his red pajamas and slept between freshly pressed colored bed sheets, like the one Milo had retrieved half of for him from the grinning thief with the sweet tooth in exchange for none of the pitted dates Milo had borrowed from Yossarian. McWatt was deeply impressed with Milo, who, to the amusement of Corporal Snark, his mess sergeant, was already buying eggs for 7 cents apiece and selling them for 5 cents. But McWatt was never as impressed with Milo as Milo had been with the letter Yossarian had obtained for his liver from Doc Danica. I'm going to read that paragraph again because it was one of the most completely unclear paragraphs I've ever read. McWatt crinkled his fine, freckled nose apologetically and vowed not to snap the cards anymore, but always forgot. McWatt wore fleecy bedroom slippers with his red pajamas and slept between freshly pressed colored bed sheets like the one Milo had retrieved half of for him from the grinning thief with the sweet tooth in exchange for none of the pitted dates Milo had borrowed from Yossarian. McWatt was deeply impressed with Milo, who, to the amusement of Corporal Snark, his mess sergeant, was already buying eggs for 7 cents apiece and selling them for 5 cents. But McWatt was never as impressed with Milo as Milo had been with the letter Yossarian had obtained for his liver from Doc Danica. "What's this?" Milo had cried out in alarm when he came upon the enormous corrugated carton filled with packages of dried fruit and cans of fruit juices and desserts that 2 of the Italian laborers, Major Blank de Coverley, had kidnapped for his kitchen, were about to carry off to Yossarian's tent. "This is Captain Yossarian, sir," said Corporal Snark with a superior smirk. Corporal Snark was an intellectual snob who felt he was 20 years ahead of his time and did not enjoy cooking down to the masses. "He has a letter from Doc Danica entitling him to all the fruit and fruit juices he wants." "What's this?" cried out Yossarian, as Milo went white and began to sway. "This is Lieutenant Milo Minderbender, sir," said Corporal Snark with a derisive wink. One of our new pilots. He became mess officer while you were in the hospital this last time. What's this? Cried out McWatt late in the afternoon as Milo handed him half his bedsheet. It's half of the bedsheet that was stolen from your tent this morning, Milo explained with nervous self-satisfaction, his rusty mustache twitching rapidly. I'll bet you didn't even know it was stolen. Why should anyone want to steal half a bedsheet? Yossarian asked. Milo grew flustered. You don't understand, he protested. And Yossarian also did not understand why Milo needed so desperately to invest in the letter from Dr. Nika, which came right to the point. Give Yossarian all the dried fruit and fruit juices he wants. Dr. Nika had written. He says he has a liver condition. A letter like this, Milo mumbled despondently, could ruin any mess officer in the world. Milo had come to Yossarian's tent just to read the letter again, following his carton of lost provisions across the squadron like a mourner. I have to give you as much as you ask for. Why? The letter doesn't even say you have to eat all of it yourself. And it's a good thing it doesn't, Yossarian told him, because I never eat any of it. I have a liver condition. Oh yes, I forgot, said Milo in a voice lowered deferentially. Is it bad? Just bad enough, Yossarian answered cheerfully. I see, said Milo. What does that mean? It means that it couldn't be better. I don't think I understand. Without being worse. Now do you see? Yes, now I see, but I still don't think I understand. Well, don't let it trouble you. Let it trouble me. You see, I don't really have a liver condition. I've just got the symptoms. I have a Garnet Flyshaker syndrome. I see, said Milo. And what is a Garnet Flyshaker syndrome? A liver condition. I see, said Milo, and began massaging his black eyebrows together wearily with an expression of interior pain, as though waiting for some stinging discomfort he was experiencing to go away. In that case, he continued finally, I suppose you do have to be very careful about what you eat, don't you? Very careful indeed, Yossarian told him. A good Garnet Flyshaker syndrome isn't easy to come by, and I don't want to ruin mine. That's why I never eat any fruit. Now I do see, said Milo. Fruit is bad for your liver? No, fruit is good for my liver. That's why I never eat any. Then what do you do with it? Demanded Milo, plodding along doggedly through his mounting confusion to fling out the question burning on his lips. Do you sell it? I give it away. To who? Cried Milo, in a voice cracking with dismay. To anyone who wants it, Yossarian shouted back. Milo let out a long, melancholy wail and staggered back, beads of perspiration popping out suddenly all over his ashen face. He tugged on his unfortunate mustache absently, his whole body trembling. I give a great deal of it to Dunbar, Yossarian went on. Dunbar, Milo echoed numbly. Yes, Dunbar can eat all the fruit he wants and it won't do him a damned bit of good. I just leave the carton right out there in the open for anyone who wants any to come and help himself. Arfie comes here to get prunes because he says he never gets enough prunes in the mess hall. You might look into that when you've got some time, because it's no fun having Arfie hanging around here. Whenever the supply runs low, I just have Corporal Snark fill me up again. Nately always takes a whole load of fruit along with him whenever he goes to Rome. He's in love with a whore there who hates me and isn't at all interested in him. She's got a kid sister who never leaves them alone in bed together, and they live in an apartment with an old man and woman and a bunch of other girls with nice fat thighs who are always kidding around also. Nately brings them a whole carton full every time he goes. Does he sell it to them? No, he gives it to them. Milo frowned. Well, I suppose that's very generous of him, he remarked with no enthusiasm. Yes, very generous, Yossarian agreed. And I'm sure it's perfectly legal, said Milo, since the food is yours once you get it from me. I suppose that with conditions as hard as they are, these people are very glad to get it. Yes, very glad, Yossarian assured him. The two girls sell it all on the black market and use the money to buy flashy costume jewelry and cheap perfume. Milo perked up. Costume jewelry, he exclaimed. I didn't know that. How much are they paying for cheap perfume? The old man uses his share to buy raw whiskey and dirty pictures. He's a lecher. A lecher? You'd be surprised. Is there much of a market in Rome for dirty pictures? Milo asked. You'd be surprised. Take Arfie, for instance. Knowing him, you'd never suspect, would you? That he's a lecher? No, that he's a navigator. You know Captain Aardvark, don't you? He's that nice guy who came up to you your first day in the squadron and said, Aardvark's my name, and navigation is my game. He wore a pipe in his face and probably asked you what college you went to. Do you know him? Milo was paying no attention. Let me be your partner, he blurted out imploringly. Yossarian turned him down, even though he had no doubt that the truckloads of fruit would be theirs to dispose of any way they saw fit once Yossarian had requisitioned them from the mess hall with Doc Danika's letter. Milo was crestfallen, but from that moment on he trusted Yossarian with every secret but one, reasoning shrewdly that anyone who would not steal from the country he loved would not steal from anybody. Milo trusted Yossarian with every secret, but the location of the holes in the hills in which he began burying his money once he returned from Smyrna with his plane load of figs and learned from Yossarian that a CID man had come to the hospital. To Milo, who had been gullible enough to volunteer for it, the position of mess officer was a sacred trust. I didn't even realize we weren't serving enough prunes, he had admitted the first day. I suppose it's because I'm still so new. I'll raise the question with my first chef. Yossarian eyed him sharply. What first chef? He demanded. You don't have a first chef. Corporal Snark, Milo explained, looking away a little guiltily. He's the only chef I have, so he really is my first chef, although I hope to move him over to the administrative side. Corporal Snark tends to be a little too creative, I feel. He thinks being a mess sergeant is some sort of art form and is always complaining about having to prostitute his talents. Nobody's asking him to do any such thing. Incidentally, do you happen to know why he was busted to private and is only a corporal now? Yes, said Yossarian. He poisoned the squadron. Milo went pale again. He did what? He mashed hundreds of cakes of GI soap into the sweet potatoes just to show that people have the taste of Philistines and don't know the difference between good and bad. Every man in the squadron was sick. Missions were canceled. Well, Milo exclaimed with thin-lipped disapproval. He certainly found out how wrong he was, didn't he? On the contrary, Yossarian corrected, he found out how right he was. We packed it away by the plateful and clamored for more. We all knew we were sick, but we had no idea we'd been poisoned. Milo sniffed in consternation twice, like a shaggy brown hair. In that case, I certainly do want to get him over to the administrative side. I don't want anything like that happening while I'm in charge, you see, he confided earnestly. What I hope to do is give the men in the squadron the best meals in the whole world. That's really something to shoot at, isn't it? If a mess officer aims at anything less, it seems to me he has no right being mess officer. Don't you agree? Yossarian turned slowly to gaze at Milo with probing distrust. He saw a simple, sincere face that was incapable of subtlety or guile, an honest, frank face with disunited large eyes, rusty hair, black eyebrows, and an unfortunate reddish-brown mustache. Milo had a long, thin nose with sniffling, damp nostrils, heading sharply off to the right, always pointing away from where the rest of him was looking. It was the face of a man of hardened integrity who could no more consciously violate the moral principles on which his virtue rested than he could transform himself into a despicable toad. One of these moral principles was that it was never a sin to charge as much as the traffic would bear. He was capable of mighty paroxysms of righteous indignation, and he was indignant as could be when he learned that a CID man was in the area looking for him.